Good morning, everybody. This is Mike Brennan here at the National Hurricane Center. It's just after 10 a.m. Central Time on Saturday, July 6th, coming on with an update on Tropical Storm Beryl and its threat to much of the Texas coast. It's going to develop here over the next couple of days. You can see on satellite imagery here that Beryl continues to move steadily west-northwestward across the Gulf of Mexico at about 12 miles per hour, currently centered about just under 500 miles to the southeast of Corpus Christi, Texas, and moving off again west-northwestward. We've seen shower and thunderstorm activity increasing near the center of Beryl this morning. We've seen the pressure reported by the Hurricane Hunter aircraft come down just a little bit, but the winds, the data from the aircraft suggests the winds are still around 60 miles per hour. So we're not expecting a lot of intensification with Beryl today, but we are expecting it to move into a more favorable environment as it nears the coast of Texas beginning Sunday and then continuing up until landfall on Monday. So let's hit the hazards again here. We have a storm surge watch that continues in effect all the way from the mouth of the Rio Grande up to High Island, Texas, with a widespread potential for 2 to 4 feet of inundation above ground level. But we're most concerned about this area here between San Luis Pass and Baffin Bay, including places like Matagorda Bay, Corpus Christi Bay, where we could see storm surge inundation of 3 to 5 feet above ground level. So we'll likely issue a storm surge warning for portions of this area later today and begin to focus in on the area that has the greatest potential for that life-threatening inundation. But anybody living within this storm surge watch area, if you live in a storm surge evacuation zone, please start making preparations in case you are asked to evacuate by local officials, and get ready to potentially, you might need to leave your home, especially out on these barrier islands, but also in these bays, Galveston Bay, Matagorda Bay, Corpus Christi Bay, where we could see some of those higher inundation values play out as Beryl makes landfall along the Texas coast on Monday. Moving now to the hazards associated with the wind, we have a hurricane watch that's in effect from San Luis Pass, just west of Galveston, all the way down the Texas coast to the mouth of the Rio Grande, including places like Corpus Christi, Port O'Connor, South Padre Island. We've also issued a tropical storm warning from the mouth of the Rio Grande up to south of Baffin Bay. So we are expecting tropical storm conditions within this region within the next 36 hours or so. Hurricane conditions are possible everywhere within that hurricane watch area, beginning, say, Sunday night and continuing into Monday with the landfall of Beryl expected along the coast of Texas. If we look at the track forecast, it really hasn't changed much this morning. We're expecting a west-northwestward to northwestward motion to develop over the next day or so, and with a northward turn expected Sunday night and Monday. And this area here is where Beryl is going to get into that more favorable environment for some intensification, and we are expecting the system to go on and regain hurricane strength. Now, when you look at the track forecast here, you want to keep in mind that it won't take a very small shift to make a big difference in where Beryl makes landfall. If it moves, say, just to the west of our forecast, it can make landfall more on the lower Texas coast. A shift to the right would bring it up towards closer towards the past Matagorda Bay up towards the San Luis Pass area. So everyone here is at risk of seeing those hurricane and storm surge conditions, and we'll see how the track sorts itself out. After landfall, as expected, Beryl will quickly weaken from a wind perspective, but it's going to bring a heavy rainfall threat across much of eastern Texas. And if we look at that rainfall threat over the next couple of days, going actually all the way into the middle portions of next week, we're expecting widespread rainfall totals across the portions of the Texas Gulf Coast, much of eastern Texas, of 5 to 10 inches. We don't know exactly where that heaviest rainfall is going to fall. It'll depend on the details of Beryl's track, but the potential is there for some isolated totals to exceed 15 inches in some locations. And that's going to lead to the potential for some fairly significant flash flooding, especially as we get into the day on Monday. We have a level 3 out of 4 risk for flash flooding in places like Victoria, Houston, Bryan, College Station, up to Palestine. This is the area that we're most concerned about for the potential for some pretty considerable flash flooding, especially during the day on Monday. That flash flood risk will also extend up into portions of the Arklatex region and continue later on into the week. I also want to touch on the rip current risk. As Beryl moves across the Gulf of Mexico, there's going to be widespread dangerous surf and rip currents across much of the Gulf Coast. So please heed any warning flags you see. Distant hurricanes can be deadly. So even in places like the Florida Panhandle, the Florida West Coast, Alabama Gulf Coast, if you see dangerous conditions in the ocean, you see those double flags flying or red flags flying, please stay out of the water and heed any advice from your local officials. I do want to touch briefly on the tornado threat that's going to develop beginning beginning on Sunday along portions of the Texas Gulf Coast, places like Houston, Galveston to Victoria, down to Corpus Christi, could see the threat of tornadoes as those rain bands from Beryl begin to move on shore later on Sunday. So just a couple of quick reminders as before we wrap up is remember, get official forecast information from here at the National Hurricane Center at hurricanes.gov. You can also find more information from your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. Make sure you have multiple ways to receive emergency information and weather warnings through a weather radio. Make sure wireless emergency alerts are turned on your smartphone. Make sure, again, you have multiple ways to get information, especially overnight when you're asleep. Flash flood warnings, tornado warnings can be issued with very short notice, and you want to take action immediately if you hear those. And again, remember to focus on the impacts of the storm, not whether Beryl is currently a tropical storm or a hurricane. Remember to keep focused on those water hazards, especially. Those are the ones that kill the most people in tropical storms and hurricanes in the United States, the rainfall, flooding, and the storm surge. And pay attention to any watches and warnings that are issued. So we'll wrap up quickly here with the key messages. There's an increasing risk of dangerous hurricane force winds, life-threatening storm surge, heavy rainfall, flooding across the lower and middle Texas coast beginning Sunday into Monday, with that rainfall flooding spreading eastward into much of eastern Texas as we go through the middle portions of next week. And again, rip currents are going to be a big hazard along the Gulf Coast this weekend and into next week as well. So please stay tuned for more updates here from the National Hurricane Center. We'll be having another update on Beryl later today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Brennan.